We're going to talk about Joseph. We're going to conclude his story and about forgiveness. And I am excited because I was trying to figure out some kind of prop that would help me better understand forgiveness. And I came across this that was given to me years and years ago. And I'm going to show this to you. And just make sure I have it the right way. All right, this is a delete key. This key is from a keyboard that was put a keychain on it. And it's really, really neat. I used to push the button and it would glow up, but I guess I pushed it so many times it wore out the battery. But the concept, which is even funny once I tell you the concept, is that it was meant to do this. If I needed to forgive somebody, I would push it and it would delete it, and I would forgive them, and it would be okay. And I don't know if I pushed that a lot. But at the end of the day, what the concept was told to me is, Jeff, in order to forgive, you need to forgive and forget. Very good. You've heard it as well. And the more I researched, the more I realized forgive and forget sounds really good, but it's not actually correct. It's not fully correct. I think the concept is like, okay, forget about it, don't dwell on it, that makes sense. But it's necessarily not the best advice somebody could give you about forgiveness. I've just rattled your world, didn't I? Because you're like, that's all I knew about forgiveness. But with this, it's not just deleting it like it never happened. It's like, oh, they hurt me. Yep, never happened. We can't do that because then we would just forget a lot of moments in our life because we just keep deleting that. But in essence, to forgive, we're going to dive into what did Joseph actually do with forgiveness? How did he face his brothers? Because we're in the epic conclusion of the final story of Joseph as he had this brothers that basically disowned him and got rid of him and left him for dead, basically, and they're going to meet back up again. They're going to meet back up and they're going to see what's going to happen. And so we'll put this down for now, and we're going to come back to that delete button. We're going to see if it makes a little more sense a little bit later on. And so I want to ask you this question. This is rhetorical, so please don't shout it out, and online don't type and don't comment back, okay? Rhetorical question. Just process in your head. Have you ever been in a situation, and remember a time, where you hurt somebody and needed to be forgiven? Don't answer. Okay, you've hurt somebody and need to be forgiven. Sometimes it's like, I hurt somebody, but I didn't realize I hurt them. Well, we'll work on that later. But have you ever been in a situation where you've hurt somebody and needed to be forgiven? Yes? No. Have you ever been in a situation where you were hurt by somebody and you needed that forgiveness given to you? If you've ever been in a situation where somebody forgave you of doing something to them, there's something amazing that happens when forgiveness is given. Some people say, well, forgiving people is just more about you forgiving that person than it is about them receiving forgiveness. I was looking at a bunch of research online this week about forgiveness, and there's a lot of confusing advice out there on forgiveness. It's actually crazy. And contradictory advice on forgiveness. But again, you can read anything that you want to online for sure. But one of the things that we're going to look at is what does God say about forgiveness? And we want to be careful. So here's a little bit of advice that I'm going to put on the screen here. This is the definition, or a definition, of forgiveness. And it says this: a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person who has harmed you. So that's an act of, I need to give forgiveness because somebody's harmed me. I forgive you for doing that. And we're going to look at Joseph. We're going to go, okay, let me understand, why does Joseph need to forgive his brothers? Do they even deserve it? If you're joining us for the first time in our What's Next series, for the last 3 weeks we've been journeying through Joseph. We're looking at his life, at his brothers, and I'm going to kind of recap that a little bit. So I'm going to sit here by the TV and help us kind of catch up a little bit faster. So what we've learned about Joseph so far is this. Joseph had many older brothers. He had a lot. His dad was in his old age when he was born, and so because of that, Dad made him an ordinate robe. We said if it was in the late 90s, it would have been a bedazzled robe. Would have been pretty awesome. But it was a coat of many colors, so I think maybe his dad just kind of picked up some scraps, and like any dad did, threw something together. But it was pretty nice. And his brothers were jealous of him because he got it, maybe because he flaunted that coat, I'm not quite sure. But Joseph had 2 dreams. And out of those 2 dreams, they both started talking about his family bowing down to him. First dream kind of said it, and the second one got a little bit more specific on that. But yet Joseph perseveres with courage, telling them, I'm going to tell you these dreams. I'm not going to keep them to myself. I'm going to say, hey, I have these dreams. There's something to them. His brothers throw him in a cistern, and they sell him because they just start getting more jealous of him, and then they plot to kill him. Okay, that jealousy keeps going. And so they plot to kill him. So they throw him in a cistern, and then eventually say, you know what, we'll just sell him off. So he gets sold, heading towards Egypt, and he goes to Potiphar's house. And there in Potiphar's house, Joseph learns to persevere and keep, okay, God must have a plan for me. So he does what he does best and lives righteous and for God. And pretty soon he rises second in command over Potiphar's household. Basically, Potiphar has everything, and Joseph is second in command. That's pretty impressive. But then later, Potiphar leaves and for a little bit, and Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him, and he turns her away and says no, and then really just leaves and runs away, in which then she turns around and says, he was trying to rape me, and so they track him down and throw him in jail. Poor Joseph again. Well, he's in jail, and he starts persevering with contentment, saying, okay, if this is where I'm at, then I will do what I need to do and live a godly life where I'm at. And pretty soon the warden appoints him second in command there. Okay, you are an inmate, and now you're given second in command, risen up, and he trusts Joseph. Well, pretty soon there's a king's cupbearer gets there, and a baker gets to jail, and he interprets their dreams, and they come true. And he says to the cupbearer, hey, remember me when you go. And unfortunately, the cupbearer doesn't remember him right away, but Joseph still learns to persevere with patience. And 2 years later, okay, you think COVID's long, okay? Try living what he did for 2 years, and he interprets Pharaoh's dream. Pharaoh has these 2 dreams, and he's trying to figure out what is going on, and they're like, oh, wait, there's this guy Joseph, he's in jail, he interprets dreams, so he couldn't find any wise counsel. He goes to Joseph, and Joseph interprets his dreams, basically saying, yes, you have 7 years of harvest that's coming your way, and then 7 years of famine that's going to be coming, and it's going to be a drought in the land. And so he says, oh my goodness, if you're the only one wise enough to figure that out, then you're the only one wise enough that I trust, that I'm going to make you, your job is to readying the nation for the years of famine. Okay, your job now is going to be second in command of all of Egypt, only second to the throne. That's bigger than Potiphar's house. That's bigger than the jail cell, right? That's a pretty big deal. And yet it's Joseph's consistency in his character and who he is that takes him on this journey, and his perseverance. And so we find Joseph now ruling Egypt, and his whole job is to get enough grain stored up for 7 years to prepare for what's to come for 7 years to protect and save people. And so we enter chapter 42 to 45, where we find the climactic reunion, where his brothers come face to face with Joseph, and it gets rich. But as I went through this reunion, what I found was this, that we would be here until mid-afternoon reading these verses, and I don't want to do that to you because I think you have some lunch plans, or you just are hungry, or you'll just stop listening to me, one of the two. And what we're going to do is we're going to recap what's happening in chapter 42, 43, 44, and we're going to zoom in to chapter 45, where we're going to find out what the forgiveness and the encounter, this climactic reunion, we see. So I'm excited to dive in and see. So chapter 42, 43, 44 talks about this. We have Joseph's brothers are sent by their dad, Jacob, Joseph's dad, now called Israel. And so they get sent away to Egypt to go get grain because their timeline, where they are currently, is they're 2 years into the famine. Okay? So 7 years have already come and gone. Joseph has collected grain. He's done the right thing. He's got it already. And as people come, they come to Joseph, and he issues out if you get grain, and he sells it all that. Okay? So he's the guy. So that's happening over here. Joseph's brothers are sent by their dad. Okay, you need to go get some grain. And they don't know who they're going to go meet. It's really good. It's a movie, really, it is. And verse 6 picks up, and verse 6 says this. Now Joseph was the governor of the land. The person who sold grain to all its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, I love it. When Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground because they didn't know him. Okay? They get there, and again, if you understand and you can even remember a little bit of history, Pharaoh, what do you picture Pharaoh wearing? A headdress, a garment, makeup, right? And so there's Joseph is wearing a garment. So is he recognizable? Probably not. But if you don't know that this person exists anymore, are you even thinking, well, that might look like him? No, I'm seeing a ghost. That's not him. So they're not even picturing that it even could be Joseph. But does Joseph know who they are? You better believe it. He knows who they are. And so emotions, because he doesn't know they're coming. He just sees them. So emotions start just going through Joseph. And so Joseph decides in chapter 43, 44, there's this game of punishment and redemption that Joseph plays some mind games. I love mind games as best as anybody, and I love it doing with my kids, okay, to make them work for stuff. But one of the things you do need to know is Joseph is on a mission to find out if his brothers are truly repentant of what they have done to him. Because, listen, Joseph has all the power of Pharaoh. He is the second in command to the throne. Whatever he wants to do, he can do. Ever have or see a little brother that then took a growth spurt and becomes the big brother, right? And that little brother you were punishing, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, all right? And you apologize really, really fast, okay? That's 1,000 times worse because he can command an army to do things to you, okay? He can just do whatever he wants. And now you're 2 years into famine. You need to buy grain to keep your families alive. And now it comes down to Joseph? Oh, man, the irony, right? And so we're going to jump in. I want to read chapter 45, 1 to 15. So if you have your Bibles with you, you can open up with me, read along, or I'll put it on the TV here for us to read. And it says this. Verse 1. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all of his attendants, and he cried out. He's just seen his brothers. Have everyone leave my presence. Okay, whether there's an emotion, whether there was something historical here, reunion is happening, everyone leave my presence. So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. Hey, this is a family thing. So let's just let it be a family thing. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. You want to talk about, I don't think he hit that button and forgot about it. I think he knew what they have done, and there was bottled up emotions that he was holding on to. He's dealt with it, but at the same time, when you see, that ghost from your past, a wave of emotions can hit you like you never experienced. And so he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. And the first question he asks, is my father living? See, if you were given a special robe, there's a special bond between he and his dad. And so, obviously, one of the things he wants to know is not, I don't care about my brothers to the degree that I care about my father. Is my father okay? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Okay, not only do you have second in command that's terrifying, you have this palace, this area that you're in that obviously sets the tone, that's like intimidating. You're trying to get grain to survive, and you have this guy that's saying something that you can't even process right now. He's weeping loudly. It's throwing you off. They're terrified at the situation. Then Joseph said to his brothers, okay, come close to me. Let's slow down here for a second. Come here. Come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph. But in case Dad had another son and replaced me and called him Joseph 2.0, I'm the one you sold to Egypt. Right? Okay? Because I don't know. So I'm your brother Joseph, the one you sold to Egypt. And now do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here because, and as I'm reading this, I'm like, wait a second, Joseph. Why would you say this? Joseph, we just processed. You literally can do whatever you want to your brothers. You aren't the little brother anymore. You have all the power in the world. Why are you saying don't be distressed? Be distressed, at least for 5 minutes. Like, enjoy it for 5 minutes. No, he doesn't. And don't get angry with yourselves for selling me. Well, you should get angry about that. You deserve it, right? Like, that's what we want to go to. That's our emotions getting the best of us. But because Joseph was persevering with purpose, he saw the bigger picture. It's what we say, he had the 30,000-foot view on things. He zoomed out, and he realized, if I'm just looking really close at the situation, yeah, of course I'm going to get mad, and I'm going to get angry, and I'm going to get all that stuff. But what is it going to solve? Nothing. The long haul, it solves nothing. And so, do not be distressed. Do not get angry with yourselves for selling me, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. That's how he knew. Because it was to save lives. Keep in mind, there's a 7-year famine. They're 2 years into it. Joseph has already heard what God had through the dreams, and he acted upon it, and he allowed Pharaoh. He is second in command, and he is ready, and it has been for 2 years saving lives by giving them during this drought. And now he wants to save theirs. So for 2 years now there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So not only was he there for the mass, he was there for his family too. God doesn't just love us, he loves all of us. And so I just love this, that it wasn't just to save their lives, but also to preserve a remnant on earth. And we're going to find out soon. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of Egypt. Now hurry back to my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me and don't delay. Okay? He knows his brothers are Nimrods, knuckleheads, lots of different language words, okay? He knows they could get sidetracked because their father said them. They've been hanging out with their dad, but he hasn't, and he has a special bond. He's like, guys, don't delay. Do you know who you're talking to? Remember who has the power? Don't delay. Okay? And so then he says, you shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you, your children, your grandchildren, your flocks, your herds, and all you have. Wow. He didn't just say, you're going to have a place here. He said, it's not just me and our relationship, but I realize that you have family. Okay? And if I sever that with my lineage, okay, my genealogy. And so it's my character, it's my legacy, and what power do I have? I have power over you, but I also have power over your children and your grandchildren and your flocks and your herds and everything you have. He understood that. He had the 30,000-foot view. And so he says, you're going to bring everybody. I want your home, what feels like your home, to be here. I want to look after you. I want to save you. I will provide for you there because 5 years of famine are still to come. Guys, you can say no to me, but you got to go through 5 more years of this. Or you can come with me, or you can go by yourself, right? Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. So if you don't believe me, Benjamin, and you're like, why would he pick Benjamin out of the crowd? Why Benjamin? Well, see, Benjamin and Joseph were of the same mother. All of his other brothers were of a different mother. They all have the same father, but their mother. And so there's a special bond when you have the same parents. And he's like, and Benjamin was the youngest, and so they were closer in age. And so he said, Benjamin will know it's me. Tell my father about all the honor accorded me in Egypt and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here. Shall I say it again? Quickly, gentlemen, right? And he encourages them to go. Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin first. There's a bond there. And he wept, and Benjamin embraced him, weeping. See, the important thing about Benjamin embracing him is that there was a mutual acceptance to the forgiveness, right? It was like, I got you. I got you back. And there was something that completed, that it takes both parties. And then he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterward, his brothers talked with him. Here's the important line here. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. You know why that's important? In my mind, it's because when you forgive somebody, you don't do it generically. You don't do it generally. You do it individually. individually, right? If I hurt 3 of you, I need to forgive you 3 individually. And then afterwards, they caught up. They connected. How's it been? What's going on? And so, let's dive in to this. I love this. I think one of my favorite quotes in what we read was in verse 5, and I'll put this on the screen here. Verse 5 says this. There it is. And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Because God had a plan, right? When you know, when you're persevering with purpose, that purpose reminds you and it helps you make the short-term decisions differently. The short-term decisions is like, you made me mad, you're going to pay for it. But if you're like, wait a second, God was up to something, that's not fair now. I can't just get mad at him. That now it gives me clarity on how to act in the short term because of the long-term thing. And I really think that that reason helped Joseph, and let me say it this way, helped him repay animosity with benevolence. Let me say that again. I think having the perseverance with purpose helped him repay animosity with benevolence. And what is benevolence? Well, benevolence is giving, okay? It's giving to those that are in need. And here's a simple way to remind ourselves. He didn't just say, I forgive you, now go home, enjoy the next 5 years of famine. That would be so mean, right? He said, I'm going to be benevolent about it. I want you to come here. I want you, your children, your grandchildren, your flocks, the herds, and the things you own here with me. Man, he used his power and he was benevolent about it. Huge, because he was acting upon the way God would want him to do it. But here's what I want to focus on for a second. When you repay animosity with benevolence, it confuses people. It really makes them, like, I don't understand. If you've ever been in a situation where somebody deserved something and you didn't give them what they deserved, you showed them grace, you showed them love, you gave them an extra 20, whatever the case may be. Do you ever see the people's faces? It's like it's like I don't understand what's happening. Because when you follow what God follows, God repays animosity with benevolence. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and yet he says, I'm going to give you my only son. And he's going to take your place, and he's going to be punished, and he's going to die so that you can have eternal life. That doesn't make sense, people. That doesn't make sense. Why would your only son, Jesus, have to suffer because of this numbskull, this Nimrod? Okay, that doesn't make sense. Well, God pays animosity with benevolence, and I truly believe that Joseph was a man after God's own heart. And he says, I'm going to pay animosity with benevolence. We're called as Christians to love God and love others. Colossians 3:13 says this. I love this. We're going to put this up on the screen. And it says this. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. The Lord forgave us, so we must forgive others. 6 years ago when I came to the Point Church, Pastor Kevin said a line that I was like, I love that line. It helps bring clarity to things in a simple way. I love Dr. Zeus. I'm not saying Pastor Kevin and Dr. Zeus is the same person, but man, at times, sometimes maybe they are. Don't tell him I said that. He might be watching right now. Sorry. What he says is this, is hurting people hurt people. Hurting people hurt people. Meaning, it's simple. When I'm hurting, I can hurt other people. Right? When I'm hurting, I find my filter doesn't work as well. I find when I'm hurting, I just feel it feels better when I hurt somebody else. If I can't rise up, I'll bring you down. Right? That's naturally an instinct that happens, and we have to fight against that. We have to rise against that, and we have to follow and be a person after God's own heart. And yet, when I'm hurting, man, I can hurt other people. But when I think through that and somebody hurts me, I go, they must be hurting. And it changes everything. It allows me to repay animosity with benevolence. And Pastor Kevin said that to me. He's like, yeah, when somebody, says something mean to me, I say, how can I help you? I'm like, that's so weird. He's like, I'm paying it. I'm repaying it with benevolence. And it changes everything. And that's what Joseph's doing with his brothers. He's repaying it with benevolence. James 1:12 says this, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." See, when trials come our way, you push through those trials, God says there's a special blessing there for you. There's a crown of life for you. That's a whole other message for another day. But there is a blessing for pushing through, for persevering, to knowing, keep going, and we see that in Joseph. So let me give a quick recap. I want to kind of remind us that Joseph's journey is extensive, and there's some things we've learned along the way. See, he started off persevering with courage. And he said, when I have courage, I could tell them I have this dream. This dream's weird, that things are bowing down to me. Now the sun, the moon, the stars are bowing down. And he has the courage to be able to share that. But it's not received, obviously, that well. Even his father is like, what are you doing? And I find it's not so much doing the right or wrong thing. It's the courage to do the right thing. Okay, let me say that again. Sometimes we think, if I only knew what was right. I think more often than not, we know what's right. It's the courage to do what's right and to act on it. And then we talked about persevering with contentment. He gets to jail after Potiphar throws him in jail, and he is in confinement. And yet he finds a way to persevere with contentment. Man, contentment's hard. Especially in a world today, it's like, I could buy that on Amazon. I think my phone that's 6 months old isn't really new enough. I'm not content with it. There's something shinier, prettier, okay? There's just stuff in our faces, and we can get it. It's so easy to get to. Contentment. How do you live in contentment? And he was in jail, and he said, I'm content. I will do what I need to do in a situation I don't want to be in, but I'll do what I can do. And he rises up second in power. It's amazing. How do we be content in confinement? Hey, we're still in COVID, people. In Miramichi area, around us, we're finding that orange is happening in cities around us, and so confinement is only shrinking. We're getting a little bit more confined. We don't even know what the holidays are going to look like with Christmas, and what does confinement. We have family that we'd like to see that we can't see. I know for me personally, I know other people. It's like, man, I haven't seen my family for a year and a half, 2 years, and I loved it. There's a confinement, and it's frustrating. But how do you persevere in confinement? And then we talked about persevering with patience. Joseph was in jail 2 more years, hoping that cupbearer would go and tell Pharaoh, and maybe there's a glimmer of hope. Ever have that glimmer of hope, and then it just squashed? And 2 years later, Pharaoh finally comes through and says, hey, aren't you the guy that interpreted this dream? I have a dream. How do you persevere with patience? Some of us are patient. Some of us are not. And that's okay. We just have to all get better at patience. And the healthier we are, the more patient we can be, right? And so Joseph relied on God. He spent 2 years in jail. He was patient. And today, that epic climactic conclusion, and I encourage you to go back and read chapter 42, 43, 44 of Genesis. Man, there's a lot of back and forth happening. It's amazing. And he perseveres with forgiveness. He weeps. He embraces Benjamin. He embraces his brothers. And then he shows benevolence, and he goes above and beyond and just says, hey, come here. And Pharaoh's okay with it. Pharaoh's like, yeah, bring them here. He's like, it's the least I could do for saving my nation. He's like, well, not too long ago, I was starving in a jail cell, nothing in my stomach and no hope. And yet, here I am. How do you use that? And I just believe that when we look at this key, that we started off this delete key, and we said, what if I just take that and I just forget it? Is that really the advice we want? Would Joseph just want to forget about his brothers? Want to forget about his dad and the hurtful things and just leaving? Yeah, it feels better if I just don't have to deal with it. But the restoration that comes when you don't forget about it, when it's properly dealt with. I believe forgiveness restores relationships. I believe forgiveness heals hurts. And I think that's what we need to get to. Is it easy to get to? No. No, depending on what needs to be forgiven. It could be a long road. Okay? It's not forgive and forget. That's easy. Okay? It's not a Staples commercial, but it is easy. Okay? But at the end of the day, we want to forgive, and I think it's a restoration process. If you were going to take an old car and you're going to restore a car, you don't just go and buy a car. That's not restoring it. You take it apart, you strip it down, you clean it, you buff it, you repaint it. Like, it's a process. It takes some time. It's popping out some bumps, right? It's a process. And so forgiveness, I think, is similar. I think forgiveness is a restoration process that is going to take some time. It's not a forgive and forget. It's a restoration process. I think we need to use the wisdom from the pain that happens. Forgiveness is confronting the pain and learning from it. And I think that's super important. So, let me ask you this question. We've been talking about forgiveness. We've been looking at the life of Joseph. Are you in a situation where you would say, there is somebody I need to forgive? Yeah, God's brought somebody to my mind. Or maybe you need forgiveness given to you. We're going to pray here in a moment for that. But I want to pray for courage. If you need to act and ask forgiveness and say, I am sorry, I apologize for what I've done, it might be 40 years in the works. It might have happened yesterday. Might have happened this morning, coming to church. Get in the car, I'm leaving without you, and maybe they're still at home. Not quite sure. Okay? Unless you're watching online and they're still at home, and that's awkward. But here's what I do need you to know. Forgiveness restores relationships. And man, is it ever worth it if we can get there. That's what the direction we want to go. So, I want to leave you with this. I have 5 tips that a friend of mine, Carrie Newhoff, is a pastor in Connexus Church in Ontario, and he kind of talked about these 5 tips, and I was like, I love it. He's like, if you're going to apologize, here's a few things I want you to remember to help you put into action of how you can move in that direction. So I want to share these quickly with you. First one is this. Go first. Just go first. See, you're like, well, why would I go first? Like, they don't have to apologize. Let me give you a quick scenario. Okay, if you've ever watched Cobra Kai on Netflix, you know that there's 2 sides to every story, and if you haven't watched it, don't worry, just trust me. Now, in the situation where Joseph, you think Joseph's the guy that got the brunt of it, right? You're like, he needs to give forgiveness. Yeah, but hold on. Let's go over here to his brothers. His brothers watch Joseph get this special coat. Oh, you're so special. Okay, and then Joseph says, hey, I had 2 dreams and I'm going to rule over you. Okay, you're like, what is your problem, man? Like, do you have like, are you not like feeling like you're special and you just need to prove that you're special and you need to reign over us? Like, we haven't done anything. What's your problem? Like, you can see how there's 2 sides to every coin, right? And so sometimes you might be in a situation where like, I don't know if I need to forgive them. Maybe they need to forgive me. There's 2 sides to every coin. Honestly, the best advice I can give you is this. Just go first. Start the conversation. And just say, hey, you know what? That situation we had, I apologize for that. And like, oh, it's not yours to apologize. You know what? Well, I know we need to restore this relationship, and I want to go first. And start that. It gains trust. Second one is this. Don't delay. Don't delay. Joseph and his brothers, you know what they did? They delayed and they delayed. Delay, it started off with, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to say kind words to you. And then I hate you and I'm jealous of you. I'm going to plot to kill you. Right? It delayed actually made it really, really, really bad. Don't delay if there's a situation that only can compound. The third one is be specific. Be specific about it. If I'm going to apologize to you, and I'm going to look to you online right now, I am sorry for the other day, and I'm going to kick my toes and not make eye contact with you for the general statement of, the things that I said when I was not paying, and what kind of apology is that, right? That's just me just mumbling and wasting people's time. Okay, if I'm going to apologize, then one strong thing is look them in the eye and be specific about what you did. Own it, right? Own it. Don't defend. This is the fourth one. Okay, defending is like, well, I'm sorry, but, it was because it was a full moon out, and it was November, and we're still in COVID season, and you're defending the situation. Don't defend that, just own it. And the last one, the fifth one, is this. Don't justify why you were a jerk. Don't justify why you messed up. Own it. For example, don't explain your way out of this. Okay? Well, it was because, like I just said earlier, it's because it was COVID season and because I was frustrated. Yeah, that's all great, and that helps me understand the better situation, because we will mess up, we will make mistakes, we will offend people. It's going to happen. It happened to me. It's going to happen to you. I know it because we are sinners. We are fallen short of the glory of God, but there's grace. Don't explain it. Explanation doesn't equal justification. Let me say that again. Explanation doesn't equal justification. Just because I explained it, it doesn't justify why I did it. Okay? So just own it. So if you're going to apologize to somebody, go first. Don't delay. Be specific. Don't defend. Don't justify. It's real simple. I'm sorry for what I did. This is specifically it. It doesn't excuse what I did. I'm sorry. And I think there's a restoration that happens, right? I think there's a restoration. A relationship starts getting restored. And I don't think we just want to delete it. I don't think forget and forget, forgive and forget is the answer. As much as I was told that, what I'm telling you is to think a little bit differently. I don't think it's wise to forget. I don't think it's wise to hold on. So I think there is a forgiveness, forget, but there's not a forget, because I think there's some wisdom to learn from it. And ultimately, Joseph didn't want to forget because he wanted to restore his relationship with his brothers. He wanted to be back with his dad. He told them twice, hurry up, Nimrods, get back here. I want to see my dad. There's a restoration. And if we can zoom out and we can persevere with purpose, the purpose of forgiveness is to restore a relationship. And it's worth the energy to be spent on it. Let me pray for us. We're going to ask the band to come back and sing a song as we can put our focus on God. God, we pray right now. We thank you for who you are. God, we know that in this room and those that are watching online, God, you may be bringing somebody to our mind that we need to apologize to. God, that we need to just look in the eye and we need to say, I am sorry. God, maybe there is an apology that is due to us. God, we can't get that going, but what we can do is we can go first. We can say, you know what, things aren't good between us. Think we can work on it? God, would you give the courage to persevere to those that are that are asking that of you in this moment? God, we know that it's about relationships. You say the greatest thing is to love you, which is a relationship, and to love others, which is a relationship. God, we heard of the story of the Good Samaritan. Even not knowing a neighbor is still a relationship. God, to take animosity and turn it into benevolence. Man, that's a game changer. God, may we take a step closer to you. May that next step we need to be is another step closer to who you want us to be. God, you made us in your image. God, we may take a step closer to being who you want us to be. God, allow us to make you proud. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.